The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stein's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas, also known as the Goosebumps channel on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And of course, I'm joined by the rest of the Goosebumps crew, Goosebumps Odyssey fan Bjorn Panelik, Shawin, Nick Shaw, and the ultimate Goosebumps man, Michael Wilquist. And we are back, what else, to talk some more Goosebumps. And we have a very special treat for you guys today. I feel like I say that a lot. I feel like I say we have a special treat every time, but we got a lot of special treats, but this one is extra special. We are revisiting The Haunted Mask 1 and 2, arguably some of the best episodes of the Goosebumps 90s TV show. And I'm telling you guys, we got a really, really special guest here today, and that is...
Hi, Kathryn Long here.
Hi there, and Kathryn played Carly Beth in both episodes, and is pretty popular character in the Goosebumps world, so we're very happy to have you here, Kathryn.
Yeah, super happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And before we get into talking about The Haunted Mask and The Haunted Mask 2, I want to remind you all that if you are not subscribed and following the Goosebumps Crew podcast, then what in the heck are you doing? Because if you are a Goosebumps fan, then you are going to want to follow this podcast. Not only do we have new episodes every Wednesday, every week, talking about things from the Goosebumps books, the TV show, the movies, the merch, and everything in between. But we also, like Kathryn, have some incredible guests on the podcast. Among some of the guests we've had are Tim Jacobus, the original Goosebumps illustrator. We've had not one, but two Slappies on, Cal Dodd and Avery Jones. We've also had many other 90s show actors, including Eugene Lipinski, Kai Eric Erickson, Ian Clark, and Amos Crawley, who was also in The Haunted Mask 1 and 2. So if you guys want to check those episodes out, this is episode number 23. So that means there's 22 other episodes you can watch right after this one. So make sure you go check those out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, wherever you can find podcasts. All right, time for the main event. We're going to talk about The Haunted Mask 1 and 2. Now, The Haunted Mask, of course, was the first episode of the Goosebumps 90s television series. It aired in October of 1995 on Fox Primetime in the U.S., and this was a pretty big deal. It was the very first adaptation of a Goosebumps story. The books were going for about 3 years at this point, and this was the very first adaptation. It had a primetime slot, which was pretty unusual for many of the shows on Fox Kids at the time. The series got its official debut in November, but this was a pretty big deal. It was an hour-long episode, and it had a lot of promotion behind it. Now, Kathryn, as we said, you played the main character, Carly Beth. She is the girl in the story who is very scared of a lot of things. She's scared by all sorts of stuff. And there's these two bullies, Chuck and Steve, and they just love tormenting her. They pull pranks on her all the time and just kind of just humiliate her at every moment. And one day she finally has an idea. And she goes and buys this really creepy, really gross Halloween mask. And when she puts it on, she wants to terrorize the kids, but it sort of brings the evil out within her. It brings a lot of really, it makes her not herself. And it's a very interesting Goosebumps story because it's a very personal conflict. It's sort of almost like facing your inner demons, and it's not something that Goosebumps does a lot of sort of ghosts and monsters, and this is one that feels very personal. So I guess my first question is, what was your experience in working on this episode?
Well, first I'll say that's a really good summary. That's really deep, actually. I don't think I thought about it that deep as a 12-year-old. I was like, okay, I'm on set. Let's do this. Yeah, but I think you're right. I don't think any of us really knew the the scope of the show and how big it was going to be when it came out. I think we were all like, I was really young. I had done some TV. I had done a lot of theater. But that was like my first big TV thing. And we were all, up in Canada, in Toronto, and not really realizing, how popular this was going to be on a wide scale across, the world. And so when it came out, I was like a little shocked at like how I was being mauled in like shopping malls and skating rinks. And like I couldn't go out for a while. I had like I'm grateful there was no like paparazzi back then, really, because it would have been more severe. But I was pretty shocked as a 12-year-old, I think. Just how much that show blew up. And being in the pilot episode, we didn't really have, like on set, we weren't thinking, oh, this is the pilot episode, we're such a big deal. Like we weren't thinking that. We were just having fun and being kids and doing our job. I mean, it was a great shoot. It was 2 weeks. I remember it was like all nights, obviously, because most of the show is shot at night. So my schedule was flipped upside down. 2 weeks off school, no problems with that. It was like right at the beginning of school when we shot it too. So I was like, sweet, just a longer summer. I didn't have to go back to school at all. But yeah, like we all got along on set. That's so great. You've had Amos. And then the other Kathryn, the notorious Kathryn Long, Kathryn Short, that was like a whole deal on set. Like, oh, that's so cool. And then everyone thought she was related to Martin Short for a long time. We were like, no, that's not a thing. But yeah, no, we all got along on set. So, as far as Chuck and Steve were really mean to me and everything, we were all really good friends on set and hung out. And it was long days though. Like it was a long shoot and they made sure I got my 12-hour turnaround all the time. But like we were working hard because it was all nights. And there was a lot of days I remember where the crew was like fighting for like dawn to come up. They're like, okay, we got to shoot. Like sun's coming up. Okay, let's go. So it was always like fighting the sun every single morning to get the shots done. But yeah, the director was great. Was his name Tim?
Yeah, Timothy Bond. He was the director of that one. And he was a really
Timothy
good one.
Bond, right. It's so crazy that I still remember that. I didn't even look it up before the podcast. I should have done my reading. But yeah, Tim, he was great. Tim was great. And we got to meet R.L. Stine on set. That was super fun. I thought that was fun because I'd read the books. Oh my gosh, there's my face on a cover of one of your DVDs or VHSs right now.
I was going to say, I wonder how long
I was so young.
it'll take.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, that's incredible.
Is it in German? What is your Goosebumps?
It is, it's
is that German?
It's in German. The funny story about the VHS tape is actually because the American one and the Australian, like pretty much everywhere else in the world, they just use the actual book cover art.
Yep.
So yeah, the one that Isaiah's holding up. But in Germany, they actually used the cast members. So it was really interesting. And then that's Australia did the same.
That's not a video cover.
Yeah, and then that's the Australian one of the Haunted Mask 2. It's also got the guys on the cover. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, that chick costume. Oh my gosh, they made so much fun of me on set for that stupid costume. Like the guys were like every day be like looking good long. Like I was so over it.
Well, hey, it makes sense in terms of the episode because she didn't want to be in a duck costume in the first episode. So it made sense.
In general, all of my costuming, like the whole like overalls they put me in and because they tried to make me look really geeky, right? Because I didn't fit in at school and I was being teased. And so I was kind of like, the outcast. So all my costuming, I was just like, oh, good Lord, this wardrobe is so horrendous looking. It was, I was not about the costuming, but I was like, it's okay. It's for the character. It's fine. Yeah. But I remember just like, because the other Kathryn got all the cute costumes. I was like, why do you get all the cute costumes? I hate you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great.
Wow.
But I'm glad you brought up that it was because this was the pilot episode, and there's many people that we've talked to who've been in the TV show, and some who had no idea what Goosebumps was before they got involved. So I'm glad that you brought up that you did read the books. So you probably had quite a bit of knowledge going into this.
Yeah, I mean, so many of the books, like I read them, and I guess they just chose the Haunted Mask as the pilot. Like, Haunted Mask wasn't like featured in the books, like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like a thing. Like this was supposed to be the first book. They just randomly chose a book, I think, to be the first episode. So it wasn't like this book stood out more than any of the other stories. Some of the other stories I think are really good as well. But yeah, I mean, I grew up reading them, so it was fun when my agent was like, "Oh, they're auditioning for the TV series," and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's awesome." And so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like, I mean, to the scope that if you had read Harry Potter and then you were auditioning for like the Harry Potter movie, which I think you realized that was a really big deal, but I think we didn't realize it was a big deal because media was so much more limited back then. And now I think with media being so big, you would know right away it's a big deal and you might be more stressed out.
Exactly.
But yeah, I didn't put any pressure on myself auditioning. I wasn't like, oh, I have to get this. Like, this is going to be a huge thing for my career. And like, I was like, okay, next audition. Like, I didn't think too much about it. So it wasn't till the premiere happened and they had some, like, I was on the cover of like TV magazine and everything. I was like, oh, whoa, like, how did this all happen? Like, then I was like, oh, this is a lot. Okay, I guess this is kind of a big deal. That's when I realized, I think my dad still has that framed somewhere in the house.
Oh, that's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, he has like the cover of the TV magazine. I'm framed like somewhere in the house. I don't know. It's probably put away in a dark corner now. So yeah.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
No,
actually, it makes a lot of sense because when we interviewed like Ron Oliver and a couple others from the past, they all said that the Haunted Mask wasn't actually the first one that they filmed. They actually filmed other ones, and then the Haunted Mask came in, but they chose the Haunted Mask to be the first one. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now that you're saying,
oh, I didn't know that.
I'm glad they did,
so
because
that's kind of interesting. Because that's the way to set off the Halloween tone anyway in this franchise. Because it came out at the end of October, so it made so much more sense to use the Haunted Mask.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And I mean, the Haunted Mask is
so it makes sense that they do that first.
Yeah, it certainly does, because the Haunted Mask is the original book, The Haunted Mask, is usually regarded as like one of the best Goosebumps books, and it's weird. It as I said before, it is kind of a deeper story. It's like it's almost an outlier in the Goosebumps like lineage because it is such a deeply personal story. It's about a girl who's kind of just coming to terms with herself and just kind of accepting her for what she is. And I really love that this episode is a lot slower. There's actually moments in this episode where there's no music. It's just the characters talking. Like when she realizes that the mask is like fused with her, it's become her face at this point. And she goes running back to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper is just like, yeah, I know, but there's really nothing I can do. And he explains like what the masks are and like why he made them. And it's like a really solemn, like sad sort of thing. It's a guy who kind of like just didn't love himself, and he like made faces to hide behind, but he just had so many negative thoughts that's why they are what they are. And
man, you guys are deep about this show.
Exactly. Dang. Well, that's the thing. It's like you get to like later in the series and there's nothing like that. It's just kind of like stuff happens and that's it. But this one, it's crazy because this is the most iconic episode. Like when people think about Goosebumps, they think about, maybe they'll think about The Girl Cried Monster, or they'll think about Night of the Living Dummy and Slappy and all that. But this is usually one that's brought up quite a bit. And I've seen like people do video essays on this episode, just like talking about that stuff. That's kind of where like I'm coming from. It's like you see that and you're like, wow, I never really like thought of it like that. It's got like, that's why media literacy is so great. It's like you can read between the layers of things, even if they didn't intend it like that. It's kind of like, yeah, that's what we were going for.
Yeah, I think, I think my character at least goes through the largest range of like emotional distress in the episode. everyone else is pretty, I mean, not one dimensional, but like they serve a purpose in the plot line to help me get through everything I'm going through. Like Chuck and Steve are pretty one dimensional. And then like Kathryn Short, who plays Sabrina, is very one dimensional, just like the typical best friend, like worried all the time. And so, yeah, and then I'm going through all these range of things because I'm not happy with who I am, and I want to be, you know, more popular, less picked on, and then I want to get revenge. So then I have like this vendetta, and then, yeah. So I guess there is like a whole depth to my journey as a character in it. It's funny that you mentioned that because I was just thinking back like to all the different scenes in the episode, and I know there's one scene where like I go into my bedroom and I start crying and I rip apart my costume. And I remember right before we shot that scene, because, you know, you're 12 and you don't have a lot of like sad life experiences to pull on at that point, hopefully, you know?
Yeah,
and
hopefully.
So I remember thinking like, oh, I have to cry in this scene. And what am I going to think about to make myself cry? And I remember thinking, oh, you know, like I didn't get to go to ballet summer camp this summer because I had to do a gig. So I had to skip ballet summer camp. And that was like the saddest thing I could think of. So that was my inspiration for that scene.
I mean,
when
it works.
came out crying. So like when you're watching that scene, it's me basically like crying over not going to ballet summer camp. Because that's what I used before they started rolling to get myself to fully cry.
That was the deleted scene, is that there was a deleted scene where she got told she wasn't going to summer camp, and then that was the breaking point.
Yes, that's the deleted scene, right? And then I transitioned like way into, yeah, it was just they chopped it off. It ended up on the cutting room floor.
That'd be amazing.
But yeah, I think like I think the funnest part for me in terms of character development in that episode was them letting me do my own monster voice for the whole thing, because I had a lot of I had a really heavy theater background as a kid, and I was vocally trained and whatnot. And then I remember them having a conversation at one point when I was starting to transition as the monster. Because, you know, it's kind of gradual, like you said. She puts on the mask and it slowly becomes her, right? Or it becomes her, I become it. You know, we merge. And I remember Tim having a conversation with the producers, and I could overhear it. And they were like, oh, yeah, so I guess like at this point we'll start dubbing over the voice, or we'll start changing it. And I heard that and I jumped in and I was like, no, guys, I can do the voice. Like, you let me do the monster voice. Like, I can do it. And they were like, oh, really? And then so we did a take of me trying it. And then I remember that was a fun moment because like the crew and the camera like erupted into applause. They were like, "That's so great, and we're gonna do it, and it's gonna be live." And so my voice got a little sore from doing it so many takes, like for so many hours a day. But it was fun that was my own voice, like the whole show when I was the monster. So that was a fun thing to do. Because I really got to go into it. Like, I think there's like, I laugh a lot as the monster. I'm like, and I always like run away laughing.
That's great because
I don't know why I did that, but they were like, great, let's keep that, do that every single scene. Well, and so it just became part of the monster's personality, that like gremlin laugh.
Yeah, it was almost like mischievous.
Oh my gosh. It was like doing pure theater. It was super fun for me. Yeah, I had a great time.
There is one scene with that where it's just like, I think she like apologizes to Sabrina, is like, I gotta go, all right, and then all of a sudden you hear like the it's really...
that became like the personality of the monster. And it was pretty funny doing that.
Yeah. It was right after the scene where she told Sabrina it was Halloween was her night, and then told her, I'm sorry. But as soon as she ran off, that's when you heard that laugh. So it was like,
you guys know the show better than me. I would forget when it all happened. But yes. Yeah.
Well, there is one scene.
And I was kind of curious, like watching the episode, like I'm curious as well. Like during that scene where Carly Beth is wearing the mask and she like scares those two little kids. Like, were those little kids actually, like, scared of the mask, like, behind the scenes, or, like...
No, I don't think so, because they could see it was me, and they knew it was, because they would, like, you know, they were sitting having, like, snacks with me at the craft table, so they weren't really scared. That wasn't, like, a thing. I think the only part that like grossed everyone out was like the worm scene biting into the sandwich, because it was a real worm, and I was like method acting and like it needs to be real, and so when I bit into it, like all the reactions around from the kids, that was like genuine because it was a real worm. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's so gross.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was literally going to be my next question, is if that was a real worm. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that actually was.
And so my reaction's real too, because I was like spitting it out of my mouth, and it was like so gross. Yeah,
it was nasty.
It's funny because that's actually been like such a huge debate with people. I mean, even cast members. Like we had Alan Doucette on here, and we asked about that, and he's like, "I don't think it was a real worm." He's like, "I wouldn't."
It was real.
Like I think that's a health hazard. And then
I guess we can tell Alan they snuck it right past him.
I don't know if you watched the Amos interview, but when we asked Amos about it,
he was like,
Amos
"I don't know."
Fuck, I know you were going to ask me about that worm, and I don't know. He's like, you'll have to let me know when you have Kathryn on.
Yes. We made the decision it was going to be real. Yeah, because I wanted to be fully disgusted. I think because you shoot everything out of order, right? And by that point, we'd already started shooting the mask stuff and the voice. And I was like, I was fully committed at that point. I was like, everything's going to be real. Everything's going to be all in. So it was.
Wow.
Yeah. It was super.
Yeah. When Isaiah and I went and saw Stein at an event last year, he had talked about that as one of his favorite memories. He was like, you think you'd only have to bite into a worm one time, but she did it like 8 times. So
yeah, did it a whole bunch of times. I won't discuss a couple of times when the worm like exploded, like when I bit into it. That was really good. So whichever take they took, maybe that was the take, because I did have to do it a whole bunch of times because, background noise and people not walking in the right place in the background or whatever. But we did do it a bunch of times.
Well, that's the thing, because the take in the episode is like, you bite into it and you'd probably just be like, but it's like, it's almost like,
I spit it out right away. Yeah.
It's almost like a gag reflex, like sort of thing. Cause maybe it was.
Yeah. I think that's funny that Amos, well, I mean, like we only have so much memory, like that's a long time ago, but it's funny that he doesn't remember it was real, because I remember him and the other, what was his name? The guy who played,
I don't remember. I always blank on him. I know who played him in the second one, because it was a different kid. But
it was a different guy, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I feel bad.
Like George Davis, if I remember correctly. I think he changed his last name here and there, but I think it was George Davis.
Okay.
It will be on your signed script behind you, Nick. It should be right there on your screen.
Yeah, well, that's him.
You just have to grab it over.
But no, that was always
Davies,
something we wanted to know for sure, was just that if it was indeed, because there were some people being like, yes, it was, and then there was some being like, no, it wasn't. Or they're like, I sure hope it wasn't. So,
well, from the source, now you know.
Now you know. Everyone at home can rest easy knowing the truth.
It's been a hot topic, literally, in the Goosebumps world, like years. Like I've seen Reddit posts about this.
Yeah, people writing.
And I remember there's been mixed sources. I mean, we get, like I said, we had Alan Doucette said no. R.L. Stein says yes.
Yeah, he was adamant. He was like, I wouldn't have allowed that. So you guys must have snuck it past him. He must have been offset.
Oh yeah. I mean, Tim and I, we were just in cahoots, I think, the whole time. So whatever health hazards they were trying to avoid, that was not avoided at that point. We bypassed. We bypassed all that. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I love that.
So funny that's been like hot topic. It's like, like the bite of the worm trending on Twitter. Like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
The Goosebumps community is vast but strange.
It's just good
protein.
Something
else I was wondering too is something else I was wondering too is like, with the mask itself, like before it's the prosthetic, when it's the actual mask, were there like multiple different mask props? Because throughout the episode, she puts it on in a different way. Like the very first time she puts it on, it has like an open flap that she like folds over the back and closes. And like the second time she just pulls it over.
Yeah, there was a couple of different masks. They had one that fit really nicely to my face, because they did a cast mold of my face, right, which was actually the first time I'd ever had that done. It was a little like scary, because they're essentially, you only have 2 straws coming out of your nose and you're being completely covered in plaster, like your whole face. So it's like very claustrophobic in terms of like getting stuck in there and having to be in there for a full 20 to 30 minutes while they're casting your face. So I remember when they did the cast, and then they made a whole bunch of masks that were fit exactly to my face. And you're right, there was a slit up the back for the one I had to put on in that scene. But then the ones that they did that were for like the scenes where I was running around as the character, they didn't have the slit. So it was like very tight to get on over my head. I forget how long the whole process took. It was long because they had to glue everything down to my skin and my neck and blend it. Not as much makeup as you would see for like a movie like X-Men or something like that now. It was not that intense because it was just one prosthetic. So my lips, the teeth, the eyes were the worst because there was so much glue that had to go around my eye every day and then taking it off at night. Like my eyes got so red and so sensitive. I remember crying a few times when they would take off the eye part at night because I was, you're 12 and you're tired and it hurts. And so a couple of days I was like, okay, this is a lot. But it was great. It wasn't like a 7-hour makeup process or anything. I think it was like an hour and a half or 2 hours, which by makeup standards in the industry is nothing when you look at it now. But yeah, getting into it and the teeth, and I think I had contacts as well, if I remember. But I'd had to wear contacts before for like a vampire series, so I was used to that. They're pretty thick. But yeah, the whole process getting into it, there was a couple of different masks. They let me keep the one that I wore the most. I still have it.
That's pretty cool.
So I have the original one, which I hope maybe I can like auction off someday or do something with it. I have the original bust as well, because they made 2 busts, but it never broke. So they always made 2, like I made a bunch, I guess, in case one broke. But the one that we used the entire time never broke, and they let me keep that one. So I have it.
That's
still
pretty cool.
Wow.
So yeah, so I have the original bust and I have the original mask, or at least the one that I wore the most the last 5 days of filming.
That's really cool to have.
Yeah, it still has all the rips in the eye from where they would rip it off every night and like go under with the Q-tip. So it's like very jagged around the lips. It's very jagged from all the glue. So yeah, it's the authentic relic.
How the condition was. I was wondering how the condition was because I've seen only one other one out in the wild, and that was one that I guess Steve Levitan sold to somebody. And I'm such a huge haunted mask collector, I couldn't get this guy to sell it to me, mind you, but he was like, hey, I want to show you this. This is the original one from one of the original ones from the show. It's not in the best shape, but the only other person I know who has one is Ron Stefanik. I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think his might just be from the second one, if I'm not mistaken. If he still has one from the first one, it doesn't have any teeth or anything, so maybe that was another one used with acrylics. But
did you get like actual pieces of one though? Didn't someone like sell you like they had one, but it was like falling apart?
So the guy who has that mask is like, hey, like it's crumbling. He's like, he wants to get it sealed so it doesn't get destroyed much more, because I guess Steve Levitan just left it in front of like a window where the sun could hit it every day, and of course you don't want to do that to a mask. So it shrank onto the bust that's underneath it. So, and it's really hard, like hard as a rock, he said.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's not wearable anymore. It's not pliable anymore. So it's just kind of breaking away.
Yeah.
But he asked me if I wanted pieces of it that were falling off, and to anybody else it'd be like, no man, throw that crap away. But no, I of course was like, yeah, send that my way. I'll definitely put that into what we call the Haunted Mask Museum here.
So he's got in a petri dish little crumbled pieces of mask.
Oh my word. Well, you got a mask behind you there, I noticed. Is that like where is that mask from?
So this was actually made by a prop maker, but he doesn't. Okay. So it's just a copy of what was out there. He makes one with acrylic teeth too, which I have, but that one's over my TV.
And this one is from.
But then the Carly Beth bust is another guy that's over here who made that. He's the only one I know who actually made one fairly decent that looks like the one from the show. Because we had Matt DeWild on, and he said that both were pretty identical to what they had, which is credit to these independent artists who have no way to actually get those original props scanned and to make anything like that. So it's all based on just eye.
Yeah.
And lots of still
the bust always like creeped me out on set. I would always look at it and be like, I was like, okay, first of all, I didn't think it looked like me, so it would creep me out even more. It just looked like some weird avatar version of me. It was so weird to look at on set. Every time they'd bring it out, I'd be like, put that away. I don't want to look at it.
Well, and then they do the thing with the
weird.
eyes and the mouth, and it talks. And honestly, that's probably that's honestly creepier than the mask.
Yeah.
I remember going in to do the ADR for that because does it start saying like help me or something? And I remember going in to do the ADR and looking at the CGI over it. And it's like, it's such janky CGI, right? When you look at what you can do today, it's so funny. And so I remember looking at it when I was like doing the voiceover and I was like, that looks so weird. That's really weird.
Well, that's funny because Goosebumps is essentially notorious for its era of 90s CGI where it looked odd. Yeah. And it would certainly, I mean, like, it didn't use it a lot in the first 2 seasons, but once it got to, like, the last half of the series, it really started leaning into it, and it did not look good at all.
Yeah.
You know, like, honestly, like, the way the eyes and mouth are superimposed onto the bust, like, that, like, dated CGI honestly makes it look creepier, in my opinion.
It does.
Yeah, no, it's something about it that's a bit
uncanny.
eerie
it's like the
and
uncanny valley sort
it's
of
like
thing.
odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like yes, it's almost like disturbing in a sense, you know, like that freaked me out as a kid. I mean, the scene that genuinely scared the shit out of me though was the one in the store where all the masks start floating up and start shooting out towards Carly Beth when she's trying to escape. That scene actually gave me nightmares. Like, I had a dream that the masks were flying at me. Like, and I was screaming myself awake. And my mum's like, I told you not to watch Goosebumps. But, I mean, I was watching Goosebumps when I was 4. So, yeah, no, we live and breathe this franchise. So, like, I didn't care that it scared. I liked that it scared me. You know what I mean?
That's hilarious. I love how we had like no oversight in the 80s and 90s. Like, I think I watched Poltergeist when I was like 7. I was scared of clowns forever after that. I mean, no one was watching. No one was paying attention to what we were doing back then. It was like, oh, go entertain yourself, run outside, do whatever.
Yeah, especially when you look at back then, like some of those, even like Poltergeist is rated PG, and like that probably nowadays, that's probably more PG-13. Like PG back then was much more intense. I mean, like, Beetlejuice is PG, and that has some.
Well, I mean, that's when PG actually meant something. Now it's like PG is just kind of like they'll just add, I don't know, maybe one instance of like the word crap or something like that, or like a very, very, very subtle like adult joke. But a PG used to actually be like, you need your parents to watch this. That's the thing. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, PG is basically just the new G.
One thing about the mask.
I'm the oldest one in this group, so I'm very familiar with just getting thrown into the mix of the horror genre because I think like Child's Play at 6 and all this other stuff. There was just they didn't care then. It wasn't such a big deal.
Yeah.
So those ratings didn't really mean much back then like they do now.
One more thing about fan-made masks. This is actually the one that was made by Trick or Treat Studios, who we've also had in the podcast, and they're a Halloween mask company. And these are more mass-produced, but this is a replica of the one from the original episode. Don't mind the sun hat. That's just him looking swagger. But it's a pretty good replica, all things considered. It's actually funny because this is the second one I've had. The first one I had actually did eventually wither, but one Halloween I actually like put it on and I wore it and it was like pretty cool. It felt pretty nice. And then the next Halloween I wanted to wear it again and I put it on. I'm like, oh, this is way too tight. So I can't breathe in this thing. So
that's the whole point.
I know, and that was like, oh no, it's real.
It's not meant to come off. It's the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mask didn't actually look very scary without the teeth. The teeth made it look way scarier. Like, when I remember when I would have the mask on, like, when they'd put it on every day, and then I'd look in the mirror, I'd be like, oh, it just looks fine. Then you put the teeth on, and you're like, oh, now it looks scary.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, too. It's like, I think, like, as the episode goes on, the teeth get more, like, realistic. And I think even at one point, they actually made it look like they were, like, real teeth. But that was it was incredible on the part of, like, the prosthetics and Ron's team and all that stuff, because that mask was really well done. It
was really well done. And they had, like, now I'm trying to remember. Now things are coming back to me as we're talking. Like, there's a scene where, like, I'm in the mirror and I'm noticing like how real it is or something. I forget exactly what goes on in that scene, but I remember they were like glazing me up like a donut. Like all of this like sweat and stuff they were putting on the mask so that it looked like hyper realistic. And like when you did the close up and stuff, I was just like, oh, I look super shiny. I was glazy. But yeah, they definitely, the team was working overtime for sure, especially for that era to make it look really hyper realistic. And I think, scary for the kids who were watching it. I think they were pushing the envelope definitely for our age category of like what was kosher to put on primetime TV that was scary enough, but not too scary. So I think they did their job for sure. Yeah, the floating heads was a fun scene. I mean, I shot all that without anyone there. It was just like, run away from now. So like you'd be shooting it and they're like, now the heads are coming this way. And then I would have to run a certain direction. And then in the graveyard scene too, running. And that graveyard scene was shot like at 4 a.m. or something. I remember that's the one day when the producers were like screaming at everyone to get everything done fast because it was like the last 2 days of shooting and they had limited time. And so we shot that like as fast as we could because we were losing night sky, like daylight was coming up. And then they start shooting lights in opposite directions and blocking things off to like maintain the darkness in the shot. But yeah, like running through the graveyard and like tripping and falling and the heads are like imaginary running after you, but they're not there. It's all like green screen afterwards. But yeah, those were all fun night shoots. But yeah, I never got to see the heads.
It was funny though, because I was just about to say when we talked with Alan, he had pictures of when they did that effect, because yeah, it was like the sort of like skin tight like blue screen suit, and then they would have the masks on, so then it was like it looks like the heads are floating. But again, going back to how 90s television effects were done, especially on the budget that they had at the time, it's weird and choppy, but it adds almost to it. It's like a weird like, this almost works with how it's like a so bad it's good sort of thing, like in that sort of,
because they also have like this like
now, it's more like a charm. It kind of has a charm to it more than what you even see today. And to be fair, some of the movies today, special effects are pretty bad given the time. Some of the ones on Goosebumps even I think are better than some of the ones in these multi-million-dollar movies anymore. So
yeah, well,
yeah, I mean, I think for the time, I think they did a good job. So
oh yeah, it did its job for me. Oh, a lot of
you had some trauma to unpack after that one.
Oh yeah,
well, that brings up a really good point. Like there has been online, and I'm sure it's true, but I would love to see it at some point. But I guess the original ending for the Haunted Mask episode actually was you screaming when Noah has the mask on at that point. And that's how it was supposed to end. But supposedly they cut that out because your scream with that was too frightening, they thought, for TV. Was there any truth to that at all? Or is that kind of like a...
Yeah, actually, no, now that I'm thinking about it, we did shoot that ending. But like, doesn't it end with him like having the mask on and he starts like laughing and then he keeps laughing, but it goes to silence and then it fades out on that, right?
Yeah, it fades to like R.L.
Stein's outro.
Yeah, R.L. Stein
right.
did the introduction and all that. But
no, we did do a scream. Yeah, I guess that was my theater training. It was a little too realistic. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, like I think like for me the most effective one of your most effective scenes
it was too Carrie-esque or something.
Yeah.
I mean, like the thing is, like I feel like the most like powerful scene for me, and I think the scene that freaked me out the most is like not even like with the mask like floating. It's the scene where you go back to the mask shop after you find the mask is stuck. And the shopkeeper goes, "This face is your face now," and just shows you your reflection in the mirror. And like that scream was just so like soul wrenching.
It's like it's not even it's like fear, but like it's like an extreme sadness. And even going back to like the scene where you do rip off the costume, it's like, wow, like it's like it's funny too because a lot of people are like, it almost sounds like she's crying, but she's also like laughing. Like it's almost like a cry laugh. Like it's such a fit of hysteria that it's, I don't know. It was like,
I was probably like disassociating at that point because I had been that character for like 10 days straight. So probably
maybe it was
probably a combination of things.
It's just like, I remember one person in particular was just like, it almost is like she's just like so upset that it's like ripping up the costume. It's almost like a slight bit of insanity right there, just kind of coming out. And it's like,
well, I think definitely she does go a little bonkers, at the end. So I think that's all kind of blended in there. I guess it was more of a complex character than I'll give it credit for. But yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that whole like she kind of degenerates into like, madness at the end, trying to figure out how she's gonna like get the mask off, and this is her new self. So, and the whole metaphoric meaning and how that translates to the audience, like the authenticity of being yourself and not wanting to be someone you're not. And I can see that messaging ended up coming through pretty strong in the episode. So it was, like you said, probably deeper than any of us really thought about at the time for our age. So
absolutely.
Well, I will attest to that. That's why I love the episode so much and why my Goosebumps collection is surrounded by it. When you grow up and you're bullied, or you can relate to not being, feeling like you're loved, because you don't love yourself. So the episode does a really good job of portraying that different aspects of your life, because obviously, parents love you. You're getting teased at school, though, so you're not feeling loved regardless, even if you are loved at home. It's got a lot more meaning to it for a lot of people for different reasons. But I mean, like, even stuff like, I know you said you read the books. The Haunted Mask book, one thing that they changed in the episode over the book that I actually really preferred was another metaphorical turn, which was when she got rid of the head bust that looked like her. In the book, she just kind of like kicked it behind a bush. But in the episode, she had it in the cemetery after scaring Chuck and Steve. She buried it. So it was kind of like, she was burying her past self to become this new person.
Or even saying cool. Like, this is like, because Sabrina's like, well, what is that? And it's like, well, it's me. It's who I used to be. And she's like, used to be, and it's like, forget it. But it's like,
oh yeah, you guys know the episode so much better than me. Like, you guys remember all these details. I'm just gonna let you guys talk about it because I don't remember any of that. But it comes back to me when I think about it. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It just kind of goes back to the whole like it was written differently, and whether or not this was all intentional, like it could all be just a coincidence, but it does play out like that. It's like, wow, like she almost is like kind of saying goodbye to her past self, but when she's actually confronted with that, like the reality of this is who you are now, it's suddenly like, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this as my face forever.
Yeah.
So it's and then it makes it more satisfying when she does realize what that bust means. It's the symbol of love. Her mom made it for her. It's because she loves her. And then that's the moment where it finally clicks. And it's like, I got people in my life who care about me. That's all I should need.
Oh, yeah. Because at the end, when I'm holding the bust and I'm like, oh, it's a symbol of love. And oh, yeah, that's right. That whole ending. Yeah. Yeah. You guys are onto something there. Yeah. No, I fully agree. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
we was the moment every little detail. That's all I can say. Like, when we're talking together, like, we'll go so far in depth for every Goosebumps episode, even the cringy ones. Like, we'll unpack everything.
Yeah. Tune in next time when we discuss the philosophical meaning behind, I don't know, Click.
My Harris Adventure.
Teacher's pet. Yes.
Wow, I still can't believe it's been that long. Like, it's so crazy. Mm-hmm. And it's come full
next year.
Because they're doing the new. They have a new Goosebumps series now that's on Disney Plus. I think is it Disney Plus?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've always wondered whether they would like reach out to the people that are like on the original Goosebumps cast and then have them like come back and make cameos. I think they're going like a different direction with that show. Mm-hmm. So they have their own vision of what they're doing. But yeah, no, I mean, there was a movie and then there's the new series. So they're still on the gravy train of the keeping the Goosebumps alive. So
yeah, the Disney Plus show, I think we all are mostly in agreement with that. We don't much care for it because it kind of veered way too far from the material.
Because it's not really like, it doesn't really stick with the books, right? It kind of just goes into its own thing.
Very loose adaptation.
They're just using
it was almost like a
name
namesake sort of like thing. They took the likeness, but not really the story. That's a whole can of worms right there. But
okay, gotcha. I know nothing about it, so
yeah. They did do a Haunted Mask adaptation, and I feel like that was what angered people the most because they liked the original episode so much that the new one didn't do anything like that. It was a complete departure.
It was partly that, but also like the design of the original mask for the '90s show was so good. Like
the new one was basically a white
prop
face.
Makers, mask makers, and everything. Like it's incredible. This new show only made it a white plain mask. Like it was really weird.
Like like a phantom looking mask, like from the Phantom of the Opera sort of style, like just plain white.
Well, yeah, not even so much that because the Phantom was only a part mask. This is more like it's a full-on mask, but it's more like a kabuki mask, I guess. It's just plain white. Occasionally gets some emotion later, and then the next thing you know, it turns her into like a, I don't know, troll-like monster thing. It was weird.
It's weird.
It's not good, but like the movies weren't bad. Like
not approved.
Not approved
by the ultimate.
Not fan approved.
Not approved. Not approved.
Even the movie, even the first Goosebump movie, Haunted Mask, they tried to sort of make it similar to the original show. Like we're in agreement that we enjoyed the movie, particularly the first one. Like the second one was okay, but like the first movie was just fun. They made a Goosebumps movie, but they made it fun for the kids and stuff, and they did add in a lot of references for the older generation like us, like the nostalgia. Sure. So, yeah.
But my husband always jokes that because I still to this day get Goosebumps like fan mail, and it's funny because I've moved several times over the last 15 years, and people will still track me down to where I am and send me mail, which is a little creepy, but nonetheless, I still get quite a bit of like attention from it. But my husband always jokes. He's like, yeah, the Goosebumps is coming back. He's like, they should do an episode where you play the mom and then your kid finds like the mask. And then as the mom, you have to help her as Carly Beth to like, and I was like, oh, hon, you should like send in your proposal to Hollywood. I was like laughing so hard.
No, you really should. That's already a much better premise than what we got.
It'd be kind of fun though. It'd be kind of fun to like have Carly Beth grown up and then have to like go rescue like her kid or something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I'd love to see that as a story. That'd be great.
Haunted Mask 3.
Really would rather have that.
Yeah. Haunted Mask 3, yeah.
Haunted Mask 3.
Very cool. That would be awesome. They should just do like a one-off thing. That'd be awesome. But
get the whole cast back.
Yeah, that would be cool. Speaking of which,
I know Kathryn. Kathryn's not acting anymore, but we're friends on social media and stuff, and she's has a family now and is doing great. But I know some of them are still in like the industry and some are not. I'm not in the industry anymore. I'm still in theater, but not actively in the film industry. But I know some of them stayed in the film industry. So
yeah,
it wouldn't be hard to rally them all back together. It's tough with everyone being like our age now and completely, for the most part, completely different lives and like getting everyone's schedules to align and if they're available and even if they're interested, because I know some people it's tricky. Like when you go back to being revisiting stuff as being a child actor, and some people like don't want to go back and revisit that at all. They just want to be like, no, I'm not interested in talking about that. Like it's not my thing now. Mm-hmm. So it can be tricky, but
yeah.
We have had that and we totally respect their decision and we just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I think it's really fun that I had the opportunity to be a part of another franchise. It was a vampire franchise, and like the fan base for these type of shows is so huge. Like I'm actually still surprised I never did even a Comic-Con for Goosebumps or anything like that, because for the vampire series that I was in when I was a kid, I did like so many conventions and events for that. And like the fan base was was crazy. And like it was closer to when we were shooting it and it came out. So obviously all the cast was really involved and it was more of a promotional thing. But I was still always really shocked that they never did that for Goosebumps at the time when we were younger. Just thinking back on it now, I'm just realizing like, oh, we did that for that vampire series, but we never did it for Goosebumps. And I guess they just never capitalized on it or whatnot. So still a surprise.
Yeah.
It's very surprising. And I did reach out to Scholastic and they got back to me. One department was really excited about it, but when they forwarded it up, I think this is what happened, because then I got an email back basically saying, no, we don't want to do any of that. We don't want to be involved. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, I mean, most conventions, honestly, like when they get celebrities, the companies who own them aren't typically involved anyway. Like Sony doesn't put on a convention, Columbia Pictures doesn't put on a convention. It's always these independent people who do it anyway. So that's where our thought process came after Scholastic said they didn't want to be involved.
You could argue is maybe the best way, because sometimes when fans run something, fans are more in tune with, you know, that sort of thing because they're more familiar with it. So in 100%. A way, you know, sometimes it could work out.
Now that I'm thinking about it, it does make sense, because at the time, all the Goosebumps fan base would have been kids, and they wouldn't have been able to be the ones, you know, kind of spearheading that opportunity to go and do things like that. And conventions for kids is not really like a thing, but for vampire series, especially adult series, that would have made sense that there would have been a fan base to do it right then. Whereas now we're all grown up. So now all the Goosebumps fan base is older. So I guess it's just like it's a delayed process, but. Yeah, it's so us. Crazy to see. It's so crazy to see like how many YouTube, like not channels, but like videos are made about the Haunted Mask, and like where are they now, and what and dissecting the episode and whatnot. And it's sometimes I'll go on YouTube and I'll comment on them if I see them come across, or and then they're like, oh my gosh, and I was like, yeah, great job guys, you're doing great work. Like,
that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Babies, like finally celebrating all the fun stuff that we had back as kids. So
yeah, it's always
and
good.
That's why I feel like a lot of the guests decide to come on, to be honest. Like all the ones we've had, it's just like, oh, you want to talk about Goosebumps? Heck yeah. Like Eugene Lipinski, he's been in Superman 2, he's been in Indiana Jones and a bunch of other stuff. But the moment I was able to reach out to him, he was in Star Wars. I didn't know that either as a character. But as soon as I asked about Goosebumps, man, he was like, oh yes. He's like, I loved my time on Goosebumps. He's like, I will totally do this. And he was such a delight 100%. To talk to. So, and it's been everybody we've had.
Yeah, there was like so many fun series back then. Like it was like Goosebumps, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like, and a lot of those were shot in Canada and had a pretty big following. And I think there's more of like a cult following now because like we're all older, like I said. So, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, we all kind of circulated in the same series too. Like all of us younger actors in that generation up in Toronto. We would see each other a lot. Like we were on a lot of the same shows and seeing each other. And so, yeah, I think we all have fairly good memories of those shows. They were like a staple on TV back then. Before we had Netflix and, you know, Prime, and you actually watched cable television and you rushed home to watch your favorite shows and record them and stuff like that. It's so different now. But yeah, no, I have great memories of filming the show. It was super fun. And I know you wanted to talk about The Haunted Mask 2.
Yes. So The Haunted Mask 2 came out in 96. So it was just about a year after the first one came out. And everybody returned with the exception of Steve's actor. He was played in the sequel by John White. And John White was in, I believe he was in... Doom. Yes, he was. He was in Cuckoo Clock of Doom, which is actually, funny enough, that was the second episode to come after... Haunted Mask 1. So he plays Steve, and Steve is the main character in the sequel. He's the one who gets the new old man mask, and he not only becomes evil, but he also becomes old, which is pretty scary concept, is when you're a kid and all of a sudden you're aging rapidly to a point where you just is like, you can't even stand on your own 2 feet. And this one is definitely, you know, we talked about all the nuance and the amazing subtlety in the first one. And this one is more of a traditional Goosebumps story. You have sort of the creepy, spooky elements in it. You have the gross out stuff, like you got like spiders crawling in his hair and stuff like that. And then you also have the original Haunted Mask, who takes over the shopkeeper, and he's kind of like the main villain. So he's just kind of like walking around being like, I have to find Carly Beth. I have to destroy the symbol of love. And then you got Carly Beth and Sabrina and Chuck. And they're sort of running around looking for Steve, because Steve's, being a little rascal. So they're kind of like the Carly Beth in the sequel is not as prominent, but one thing I really like that they do is they establish right away that things did change after the first Halloween, and she's more confident in herself. She's not as scared anymore, and she's actually like easily able to like outwit Chuck and Steve. Like now, like they can't even like get the jump on her anymore, which is really cool. It makes you feel really good for that character because she's finally like at peace with herself. But then, of course, when the mask makes itself present again, all of a sudden it's a race to kind of stop whatever it's doing. But that sequel really kind of showed how well all four of you like worked together, because all of you guys were more like together in that episode. And you said before that it was great working with all of them.
Yeah, it was super fun, and we were all a little older at that point. And we'd also seen like the craziness of what Goosebumps was when it came out. So I think by the time we got to the Haunted Mask 2, we were like, hey, how's it going, everybody? Ready to do the sequel? Yeah, it's so awesome. Like we were a little older and, kind of like almost teenagers. And I so bad. I honestly remember very little about shooting that whole episode. Mostly because I wasn't as prominent. So I think there's just not as much that sticks out to me in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I was really busy with other stuff at that time. I remember we had to squeeze filming that in between other stuff I was doing. So it was like running to set, showing up, and then, okay, bye, I got to go somewhere else. It was like I was really booked really tightly, I think, for that time when we were shooting it. But it was super fun to see everyone, and we'd all matured a little bit. And so there was like more shenanigans on set and more jokes. And we were all a little bit older. And I do remember that like my hair had started going darker at that point, because I was like a total towhead when I was little. And so they like demanded that I go back to being blonde for the episode. So I remember that I did have to go and get my hair done for that episode to make it super blonde again, to stay in the Carly Beth range. And then after that, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm going back to brown. So I was like, just for that episode, I stayed blonde. Yeah. So I have very few memories of that episode, though, unfortunately. You guys would have to bring stuff up to like tweak my memory of things.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned about your hair, because like my sister was obsessed with Goosebumps as well. And, being a girl, she was even like, her hair color's different in this one. And she pointed that out. Like, it looks a little bit more blonder than it was in the first one. Like, and she just picks up on the little girly things. Yes, and I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we made sure I was super blonde for that episode.
Yeah.
See,
I was kind of like,
I would have never caught that.
I didn't catch that. No.
It's a girl's thing. My sister noticed straight away. She was like, her hair I like that color. It looks a little, like, she just pointed out all the things that she loved about it. And I was just like, oh, well, there you go. So there's something in there for everyone, And, but for me, I was just
like as blonde as the freaking chick costume. Like, I was just like a big yellow fluffy blob in that episode.
Well, one thing I really
found a love for it in this one. You found a love for the duck costume now. Like, you ripped it up in the first one, but in this one, you're like, no. Give me the duck costume.
When I saw that duck costume was back, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm going to wear this. Although it was really warm, which was nice because it was cold shooting outside. So I was grateful that I was warm the whole time. So that was good.
Yeah. No, that's
awesome.
Like I said, so Steve's more the prominent character. And for those of you at home, if you've watched our interview with Amos, we did talk more about the Haunted Mask 2 in that episode. Because Chuck and Steve are definitely more in that one. They're sort of like the main characters of this one, and like Carly Beth and Sabrina are more like the side characters. But this one follows Steve, and his motivations are a little more like, I wouldn't say sinister, but it's definitely, he's just kind of being himself. He's like, I just want to be scary just for the heck of it. There's no reason at all. There's no deep, subtle nuances inside him. But this one definitely goes harder on the sort of spooky Halloween feel. I love the graveyard scene in this one, because you got like the wolves howling and like the clock chiming, like ding dong. And then you have Scott Wickware, who we also interviewed, and he is the person who does the voice of the mask in this one when he's taking over the shopkeeper, and he's just like, he's got this big dark robe on, is like with this hood, and you just see the mask talking. And actually, one thing I wanted to bring up is that one thing he mentioned was that the mask had very little, it was hard to like actually move the mouth with the mask. In the first episode, the mouth doesn't really move a whole lot unless you're like really opening your mouth, and like really stretching your face out. So in this one, he wanted to make it look like the mask itself was talking. So he had to like really stretch it out and then like do it in ADR, I think he said. But I mean, it works because it looks like the mask itself is alive. But yeah, I mean, it's basically a bunch of little vignettes. But what I like the most about it is, because I think this was the only episode that actually had a continuation that had all the original actors. Because even in the Goosebumps show, when they did a sequel, it usually had a completely different cast. But this one had everybody returning. And the ending of this one, after they defeat the mask and Steve gets the mask off, they are just sitting around the fireplace, and they're by themselves, and they just pull the masks out. They're just like, are you ready? And they're like, yep. And they put both masks in the fire, and there's that shot of all four of them just watching the mask burn in the fire. And there's something like very like conclusive about that. It's like all four of these like friends just kind of like put that all behind them now. Even though they do the thing where the original mask like kind of like comes back, but then the dog just grabs it and buries it, and it's like, oh well. Back where we started.
I have zero recollection of any of this. This is like you guys are pulling my brain all the way back into an archive. I have to YouTube this while we're on this thing. While we're doing this, I'm totally, because I know if I see all this stuff, it's going to bring back it's going to bring back all these memories if I look at it.
And it was interesting too because John White did an incredible job, because he also does, I believe they also had him do sort of his own like scary voice. His was definitely more like raspy and like, because it was an old man, so it was like more like this, and it's like it's sounding more weak in certain parts. And as we said, this one was, the original was more of like just kind of the inner, like the dark thoughts, where this one is definitely more the physical transformation, because he's kind of just like slowly getting weaker and weaker. And the mask is like, if you don't do what I say, I will make you worse. Like, you will, he essentially says, you'll wish you were dead. And that's
pretty much, yeah,
terrifying.
Well, that's what was interesting about this episode compared to the first one, because you had multiple stories going at the same time, where really it was just the main focus on Carly Beth in the first one. Because you had the haunted mask played by Scott Wickware trying to get Carly Beth back. Then you had Steve's story and his struggle with the mask turning him mold. Then you had Carly Beth leading the charge of Sabrina and Chuck trying to find Steve and defeat the haunted mask. So you really got all three stories in this one episode, which all culminated in the end, which was great because, again, that graveyard scene was awesome. I mean, honestly, the graveyard scene in the first one was really epic too. I mean, both of them. Because even the first one where she found Chuck and Steve in the graveyard in that first one, I mean, that was such a memorable performance for a lot of people, just based on the guy who played Steve, which I think, again, was George Davies. He was like wanting to know what they needed to apologize to Carly Beth for.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just screams back, for what?
Yeah, it's like, it's almost...
So it was like, you don't know what you're doing to me? It's like, So, I mean, it was like a very, very intense moment. But then to see that kind of jump into this one, because now Carly Beth is super scared of the mask, and rightfully so. Scott Wickware played a scary haunted mask / shopkeeper. Especially the lighting and the graveyard and the fog and everything they had set up, and like you said, the chiming of the bell.
And me, like, I really
intense.
like that they made Chuck and Steve like the main characters in this one, because they were able to actually kind of give a little more personality to them. Because in the first one, they're just bullies. They're just like, they just do one thing and that's kind of it. In this one, you have like Steve, who's kind of like the more smart alecky. He's kind of like the one who's just like, oh, whatever. He's like, and then Chuck's kind of like the more slower sort of like, but he's also like a little nicer, because he's kind of the one who's like, Chuck, Steve, you're just kind of being like a jerk. Like, you're not even like being fun. You're just a jerk. But Steve's like, I don't care. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to go scare everybody. I'm going to take kids' candy away. And he's just kind of like, dude, like, I don't really want to be around you if you're going to act like this. So they kind of like flesh them out a little more, instead of just kind of being like, stereotypical bullies in a sense. But, that I just, like I said, this one, it's definitely more of the goosebumpy, campy horror side of things. But it works. It's a good continuation. And, I think both make for a really good, pairing to watch on Halloween. Just watch them like do a double feature back to back.
You'll have to remind me again, what was the name of the shopkeeper who played the shopkeeper?
I think he was just called the shopkeeper.
His real name was Colin Fox, but they didn't give him a name in the episode.
Fox. Yeah, that's right.
Colin Fox. Oh yeah, the
Colin Fox.
character...
He was such a nice guy. Like, I'm looking at the ending of the episode right now in the graveyard scene. And Colin Fox was like so great. I forgot that he has the haunted mask in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that like there's that moment where he's like trying to attack me, and then I move, and then he attacks the other mask, and then it comes off.
Yeah.
And then and then here we are by the fire.
Yeah, because it has a really nice
crazy
pan shot of like all four of you just kind of looking at the fire as the masks just burn, and it's really good. It's a really like nice way to end the episode. Especially,
this is so crazy though. Like, as I'm watching this while you guys are talking, I have zero recollection of filming any of this. Zero recollection in my mind.
Again, it's probably just because you were not as prevalent in this one, and there wasn't really as many like iconic scenes per se in this one. Where like the first one, there's the worm scene, there's the the scene in the getting the mask, and then there's the scene where it's like the mask won't come off. It's like there's moments that you could remember, whereas the second one, it's fun, but it doesn't have a lot of those like oh, I remember that sort of moment,
Yeah,
in my personal opinion at least. But they're both good.
Well, it kind of goes back to like when we had Cal Dodd, who voiced Slappy. He didn't really remember voicing Slappy, even though he did it for 4 episodes total. Because he just wasn't on set. He said it was so long ago. He's like, I just read my lines. I was gone, kind of a deal.
I was done.
It's kind of a similar thing. He wasn't as prevalent. And same with Ian Clark, who played in Welcome to Deadhouse. He said something similar. He only had a few scenes in the episode.
I'm going to show my Simpsons nerd side for a second, because when you said that he just like showed up and did his lines, it made me remember of the scene of Krusty. It's like, all right, let's get this over with. Hey, kids, I'm talking Krusty. Line 2, here comes Sideshow Mel. 3, we're done. Bada bing, bada boom. We're in from the mattress, kid. And he's like, all right, Krusty, we're ready to go.
Itself. The mask regenerates itself at the end, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's almost 3.
Like
I'm telling you,
y'all.
Yeah, it's like
see, now your husband's premise totally works.
Let's go to
the mask is back.
Let's start a GoFundMe, a petition for the Haunted Mask 3, like, and we get back the original cast. Let's do it. Like, why not?
The dog did bury it, so there'd have to be a whole scene where someone digs it up by accident and then it's brought back to life, like, some relic from Tomb Raider or something.
I would love
you kind of had like the plot already.
So Carly Beth buried the haunted mask at the end of the last episode, but we didn't know what she did with it technically until Haunted Mask 2.
True.
She said she buried it in the graveyard, and then Halloween brought it back.
Well, it's kind of funny,
so the mask kind of got it back, I guess.
There's a scene where she first comes out in the duck costume, and then her brother comes out, and it's really cool. He's wearing like a bee costume, and he's like, "Where's that mask?" And it's like, "I want to wear it again." They're like, "I thought you got rid of that mask." And it's funny to think back to the ending of the first one, where it's like a really like creepy, like, oh wow moment, because the brother's got the mask on, and then you get to the sequel, it's like, oh, everything turned out fine. It's like, all right.
He only put it on once, though. Remember? He only put it on once. You got to put it on 3 times, so he was safe. She was probably like, take it off now, and then it was all good. Yeah, he only put it on once.
The boy that played my brother, his real name in life was Noah, which is funny because my real brother's name is Noah as well. So there was like a whole bunch of funny coincidences like that on the set.
Yeah, I just love when he shows up in the first episode. She opens the door and he's there with the duck costume, and he's just like quack 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 quack.
Yeah, there's so many random funny things in that episode. And I really liked the woman who played my mom. She was super nice. I remember she was really sweet to work with. Yeah, there was that whole first, I know we're talking about the second episode, but both sets were great to work on. I was kind of laughing as I was watching excerpts from the second one, because you can tell we're like a little older with how we're interacting with each other, because we were so much younger in the first one. Even though it's only like a year and a half, it's still like between 12 and 13 and a half is a pretty big difference, because you're going into high school, and especially just the girl guy dynamics can be a little different. So it's funny just watching us. But in the first one, like the whole crew and everyone on set was so amazing. Like, I forget the name of this costume. It was a person in wardrobe. And like, we were working long nights, like I said, and there was a person in wardrobe. She was so nice. I think she was like Scottish or Irish or something. She had a thick accent, and she would just like sit and give me hand massages, like between takes, like on the nights when we were shooting really long nights. And I was like running back and forth and stuff and doing lots of stuff. Just the whole crew was so great. I think there's still a photo of me on the last day in my overalls, because I was always in those overalls. There's a photo of me with like the whole crew, and we're like posing, and I think it's still on my parents' fridge in their house. But it's like me and the whole crew on the last day when they wrapped me. And I had just gotten out of the mask, so my hair was like crazy, and I was like posing with everyone, and you wonder where they all are now, because they were all pretty much our age, right? So they would be in their 60s now, potentially, or even, older. So it's so crazy to think of how long ago that was.
Yeah.
It was a really great crew.
I remember, I think R.L. Stine always posts the picture of when you were in makeup and you had the mask on, and it was you and R.L. Stine, and then you were just kind of doing like the monster, like that. Sort of thing. It was a really good photo.
I thought it was so cool to meet him in person, because I think that was the real highlight for me, because as a kid reading the books and being like, oh my gosh, R.L. Stine's here. It was like meeting Stephen King as a kid, right? It was like the Stephen King of books. And so when he has a very stoic personality, like he's very he doesn't talk a lot, and he has a certain like way about him when he walks around, and so I remember just meeting him, and I was like, oh, hello, nice to meet you, shaking his hand and being like, I was like, it was really fun that they brought him on set for everything. So
no, it was always great. I mean, it's always great when he for those specials he would do like the opening and the closing. So he would come in and be like, hello, I'm R.L. Stine. Here's the show. Here's the story for today's show. And they would only do it for these like primetime episodes, these two, and then like Terror Tower, which Kathryn Short was in. and a bunch of others. But it was always fun when he would come on because it was like, ooh, this is like a special episode. Like R.L. Stein's got to come out and introduce this. So that was always.
But
great.
he always kind of
he's very funny.
He always introduced it like a creepy Mr. Rogers, though, because he wouldn't smile, and then right at the end, he'd be like,
yeah, you'd be like,
no, we were always like, what is that? As a kid, you're watching it and you're like, look, he smiled, but he didn't really smile. It's so weird.
It is weird.
Yeah.
I love that.
He knew what he was doing.
Mr. Rogers.
He knew what he was doing.
I've never heard anybody call him that, but that is like
that is
perfect.
On. That is like I see that in my head and I'm like, that is totally what it is.
Yeah, no, he did a good job though. He definitely he knew his persona well. He represented well.
Yeah,
he talked.
He had a real
this episode too.
aura. He has a specific aura about him that's very unique. And I remember reading an old like news article from the 90s, and they used to say how like the strange and creepy world of Goosebumps, and also the strange and creepy world of R.L. Stein himself, because they just thought he was such a unique guy.
He is pretty strange,
like how he would talk and. Yeah, like he was just he had like an aura about him, and hey, to this day they always dub him the Stephen King of children's literature. So that's like his title.
Well, that was even
essentially, and he knows it.
He's the type of guy you'd never want to like meet in the grocery mart on a Sunday in his pajamas because it would just ruin it for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just never want to run into him in real life because it would ruin the whole like facade. And so I wonder whether he feels he has to like, he goes home and becomes the guy that cooks his own food and does his laundry. And then as soon as he leaves the house, it's like, now I'm R.L. Stein. You know?
It's like a persona he puts on. Yeah, he has a very dry, sarcastic sense of humor to him.
Yeah, very much so.
It's like maybe it's funny to him. It's like the material is not funny, but something about the way he says it makes it funny. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he definitely stayed in character for us on set when he was around us, and he like humanized himself a little bit, but still very much was the R.L. Stein guy. So we were all very in awe when he was on set.
I can imagine.
So it was super fun.
Well, we're getting close to the end of the time here, but I just have one more question to ask because this episode aired in 1995, and next year it'll be 30 years since that episode premiered. Just not to make you feel
crazy,
feel older, but it's been around for a while. I mean, Goosebumps itself has been around since 1992, and this franchise is still going strong. Like we said, there is the books. The books are still going on. There are still brand new books coming out. There's 2 TV shows now, 2 movies, and a ton of other things. And I'm curious, like, what is your retrospective all these years later on being a part of all that and the sort of like knowing what it is now?
In retrospect, I don't know. I shouldn't have signed my buyout. I should have gone for royalties instead. I don't know. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm kidding. But no, I mean, I think it's great. It's like any other franchise, like Harry Potter or, whatnot. I think they saw a winner and it did really well. And so there's a way to always bring that winner back and reinvent it. And I think just the gains they've made, like we already talked about, the gains they've made in special effects and whatnot just play so well into a series like this. And they brought in some really cool cast members for the movies and, like you said, making it fun for the kids and reintroducing it really to a new generation, because our generation now, I mean, we're old as F. So, I mean, the new generation really would have no clue what Goosebumps is. So every 15 to 20 years, even less 10, 15 years, you're able to really recycle winners like that and introduce them to the kids of those kids and then the kids of those kids. So I think it'll always be a winner. This material never really fails. So it just has to be done right with good storylines. And of course, people like you who are hardcore fans, you're going to be super skeptical and critical of like, is it to the books? Like you're the purists, right?
Yep.
And so there's only so many books, so they have to like make up new material at a certain point, but hopefully they'll keep doing a good job. But yeah, we'll see. Awesome. I'm sure they'll still be successful doing it even another 20 years from now if they want to keep reinventing it. So there's movies that we love from like, the 50s, they're still reinventing now. So you can You can milk that for a long time and have good results. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I've definitely tried to pass this along to her as well. And she was a big fan. That's what got her into horror. We always talk about Goosebumps being that gateway drug for children to go into other horror nowadays.
Gateway drug. Oh
so,
yep. It's basically that. I hear a lot of people that are into horror genre be like, Goosebumps is something that got me.
And that's what it goes back to what you said, though. What we talked about earlier. It's us who grew up on it, because I was 10 when the show came out. So it's us who grew up on it now getting to appreciate it more, getting these deep dives, like more retrospective on it than we did when we were kids. Because everything we've talked about, I never thought about any of this as deep as, we all did. Back then I was Chuck. The wading pool was too deep for me. So to get emotionally. So I didn't take any of that. So it's very interesting to see how it's reflected today, who it's affected today, and to see that the fandom is still there and that they want like all these things to happen greatly for Goosebumps. And it's kind of nice. I mean, I never thought, like, back in the 90s, especially because Goosebumps faded after, I don't know, about 98, 99, it kind of faded out as Harry Potter came in.
Right.
So Harry Potter kind of pushed it out.
So crazy how close that all was together too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, it was so basically
I thought Goosebumps was going to die, but thankfully it just doesn't. It
lives on.
And you got a franchise like that, it just will live on forever. Even if there was no more Goosebumps media, I feel like it would still live on in some way.
It's 100%. It's Goosebumps is my life. Like, I don't know what I'd be doing or where I would be if I didn't have Goosebumps. It's like you institutionalized to the franchise somehow. You know how, like, they say, if you're working a job like 9 to 5 or something, and let's say someone's been working that same job 30, 40 years, you take that job away from them, they wouldn't know what to do. Like, they would die. You know what I mean? Like, that'd be me if you took Goosebumps away. You may as well sign my death certificate. You know what I mean? Like, Goosebumps is everything, to me, to Nick, to Isaiah. Like, we live and breathe for this franchise. Like, I've been collecting it for 20-something years. People keep telling me to go in the Guinness Book of Records, and I'm like, I don't even know how to do that, but okay, maybe one day. So, it's just
he does have he easily has the biggest collection in the world of Goosebumps stuff. It's pretty wild.
Oh, so crazy. Well, I think, it's really great that people have latched onto it. And like, I think it's great that when people have things they love and have like collector's editions of everything and they have something they're so passionate about, because people can do that with art. They can do it with shows. They can do it with coins or stamps or anything. But whatever you pick that you love, that's great. And our generation was so young when this show came out. So now we're all of the age where we can monetize our hobbies and really make them, full time if we want. So curious to see if when we get together in Chicago, all of our generation who are now adults being able to have fun and celebrate that era of TV making now finally as adults, because we wouldn't have been able to do it as kids back then. There wouldn't have been an outlet for it to get together like that. Whereas now we can fly ourselves wherever we want and get together and have conventions and do stuff. So yeah, it should be fun seeing everyone. I hope you're able to get as many of the cast together. That'd be the first time we'd ever all seen each other. Like I said, we never had any conventions or Comic-Cons for Goosebumps. It was not a thing. I did them for so many other shows that I was on, but never did it for Goosebumps. So it could be fun if we got everyone all together, if they were all interested. So
absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully you guys are really successful with that. You guys are going to put a lot of work into it. So I hope it goes well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's where we came in at. I mean, we couldn't figure out why it hadn't been done yet. Even Tim Jacobus, who we brought it to first, who's a good friend of ours now. And, he was like, I've been doing art for Goosebumps all this time. I'm doing conventions, but never have I thought why wasn't there a Goosebumps one? He's like, that's just a no brainer. Mm-hmm. Cal Dodd, his agent, he voiced Slappy, like I said, but his agent's even telling him, you need to start doing more horror conventions, because he voices for other cartoons and things like that he's more known for at the time. But now Goosebumps is making such a resurgence that
you got to strike.
He's now like had to put Slappy on his table to sign stuff and things like that. Like, so it's definitely a want by fans. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why this will be more successful than anything else, is because it's a fan event for fans by fans.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I hope you guys are super successful with it. I'll keep checking. Check the dates and look at my availability and hope I can make it. It'd be super fun.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. Kathryn, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come talk Goosebumps with us.
Yeah, of course. It was fun to go down memory lane, and I hope all your viewers enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So,
that's been so great.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again. Thank you. And, of course, as always, make sure you follow the Goosebumps Crew, Goosebumps Oxy fan, Bjorn Panwick, Shawn, Nick Shawn, the Ultimate Goosebumps man, Michael Wilquist, on their social medias and their YouTubes, because they really do deserve it. And, of course, give us a sub over here at the Goosebumps channel and the Goosebumps Crew YouTube channel if you want to keep up on future episodes of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking with, it's fun that we got to talk about the mask today, because we're going to be talking with the man behind the mask, Ron Stefanik, the creator of all the amazing masks and props and costumes and all that stuff for the Goosebumps 90s show. We're very excited for that one. So you guys are going to want to tune in for that one next week. And of course, down in the description below, we have the links to all of our social medias, our YouTubes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Patreon page. Please pledge if you can. It helps support us and the growth of the podcast. And until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, and from all of us here at the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, we want to wish you all to take care, stay safe, and have a very scary day.